Okay, so with the end goal in mind of a real-time chat, we need to think now about how to structure our project and our JavaScript. Now, there's many different approaches to creating a chat application like this with JavaScript. And if you ask 10 different developers to make one, then you'll probably get 10 totally different ways of coding it from them. There is no right way to code it. However, since we've been learning recently about classes, I'd like to separate our different sections of code into classes. Now we're going to have one class for handling the chat room and all the data in the chat room, and that will be called Chatroom. And we're going to have another class for handling the UI of the chat room, and that will be called Chat UI. So over the next few videos, we're going to be focusing on the Chatroom class, and that is going to be responsible for handling all of the chat room data and interacting with the database and the chat collection. So let's think about the different things that we need this chat room class to do. So I've already written these at the top right here. So the first thing we need this to do is be able to add new chat documents to the chat collection. Then we also need it to be able to set up a real-time listener to get new chats whenever they are added to the database. We also need this chat room class to be able to update the username when a user types into this form near the bottom, and we also need the chat room to be able to update the room when a user clicks on one of these different rooms at the top. So they're the four main things we need this chat room to do. So let's start off by creating this class. I'm going to say class and then chat room, and inside the first thing we need is a constructor. So this method is going to set up the initial properties on the chat room instance. Now we're going to take in a couple of parameters, and that is going to be the room and the username. So when we create a chat room instance, we're going to pass in a room, and that's going to be a string of one of these, general, gaming, music, or ninjas, and also the username, so whatever the user is called. So what we'll say is this dot room now is equal to the room we take in, then this dot username is equal to the username that we take in, and also we're going to say this dot chats is equal to the database that we created inside the index file over here, dot collection, and we want the chats collection. So we're storing a reference now to the chats collection inside this thing as well. Okay, so that is the constructor done, and we could go ahead and we could create now a new chat room by saying const chat room is equal to a new chat room like so, and we need to pass in those different arguments, room and username. So the room is going to be gaming, for example, and the username can just be Sean, and this will create a new chat room instance for us. So let me just log this to the console by saying console.log and the chat room, and we'll see what this looks like. So save that, and we can see over here we have a new chat room now. This chat is a reference to the chat collection in the database. We have a room and a username as well. Okay, so we've done our constructor. The next thing we need to do is a method to add new chat documents. So this is going to be an asynchronous method. It's going to take some time to do. So let's say async, first of all, to make this an async function, and then call this add chat. And this is going to take in a parameter, the message that we want to add. That is ultimately going to be a string. Now, when we add a new chat document, it's not just a string that we're adding to the database over here. It's actually a whole series of different properties. And remember, when we save a document to a collection, we actually send it as a JavaScript object. So what we need to do is construct an object that makes up a chat. So we'll say format a chat object. That's what we need to do here. So the first thing I'm going to do is say const now is equal to a new date. This is so we can access when the user has submitted this chat. That's the first thing. Then I'm going to say const chat is equal to an object. So this object is going to represent eventually the document over here. Now we have four things. We have created at, we have message, we have a room, and username. So let's add those on. First of all, the message, which is going to be this thing up here, the message. So I'm going to say message is the message. Now I could use ES6 and shorten this just to message because they're both the same. And then the next thing is going to be the username. So I'll say username is going to be now this username, so whatever username we pass in, and we're storing on this instance. And then we also have the room, which is this .room, and then finally we have created _at, and that is going to be a Firebase timestamp. To do that, remember, we say Firebase .firestore .timestamp with a capital T, and then we say from date, because we're going to pass in our date now right here as an argument. So it creates a timestamp object based on this date right here. We don't need that semicolon. Okay, so now we have this chat object. So every chat object is going to have a message, who sent it, the username, what room this is in. So if we added a chat while we're in the general room, that would be general. If we added a chat while we're in the gaming, it would be gaming, etc. Whatever the room is basically on this chat room instance. And then finally we have created at, which is a timestamp. So this is the object now we want to save to the database. So let's do a little comment to say save the chat document. Okay, so this is now where we need to say const response is equal to await, because we're using async await right here, and we use await in front of something that is going to return a promise, something that takes some time to do, and that is going to be this .chats to get the reference to the chats collection. And then remember, we normally say .add on the end to add something, but we're going to do it down here because it's the same thing, .add. So we're taking this essentially here and using the add method on it to add something, and what we want to add is the chat, and that is this object that we just created. So now we're going to wait for that to resolve, then whatever response we get we're going to store in this. Now we're not actually going to be using this response because we don't really need whatever comes back as a response from Firestore, but we'll take it anyway just in case we do use it in the future, and we will return the response as well. Now another option here would be to return this, which would return the instance, and then we could use method chaining. But for now, let's just return the response that we get back from Firestore, even though we're not really going to be using it at any point. But anyway, that is now our add chat method done. We're taking in a message, which is a string, getting a new date, which is when the chat was added, making a chat object with all these different properties, and then we're waiting for that chat to be added using the add method on the chats collection. Then we're returning the response, which we probably won't need. But anyway, now we have that method done. What I'm going to do is try using this method. So I'll say chatroom, which is our instance of the chatroom class, then use the add chat method. Now we need to pass in a message, which is a string. So I'm just going to say hello everyone, and then because this returns a promise, then I'm going to tack on the .then method, and inside here, in fact, we'll just format this a bit differently, put that up there. Inside here, we're going to fire a callback function, and inside the callback function, we'll just say console.log and chat added. And then we'll also tack on a .catch method as well, in case there's any kind of error, and inside that function, we'll console.log the error. Okay, so now let's give this a whirl. So if we start up this file now, because chat.js is loaded right here, it's going to run, it's going to create this class, and we're making an instance of that class. This is the room, and this is the username that we pass in. Then we're using the add chat method, and this is the message we want. So let's see if this works. We should see this new document now inside Firestore. So I'm going to save that and look over here. We can see now the chat was added because that was the callback function right here. And if we go to the database, we can see now we have an extra chat. If we click on that, it's this one. We can see hello everyone for the message, which is what we passed through over here. Hello everyone. Oops, we don't want to delete it. And we can see when it was created. We can see the room, which is gaming, and username, which is Sean. So we know the room was gaming because we passed it in there. And we know the author is Sean, or the username, because we passed it in there. So that's the first step done. We now have our chat room class, and we now know how to add chats using this class. The next step is going to be to set up a real-time listener in this class right here so that we can retrieve documents when there are changes in the database.